What's up, people? Welcome back to the Performance Playbook podcast. Today we've got the one and only Max Flory. Max, how we doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Good. So this is a fun podcast because I feel like we ended up hitting the same trajectory at some point. We kind of like aligned in. The trajectory I'm talking about is how we started eating a hell of a lot cleaner, I will say. And I think that was kind of like a fun thing to experience with someone else because I was going down this whole path. But just before I get too excited about jumping into these topics, do you want to just give us who you are, just so people know before we jump into the whole food?
Yeah, sounds good. So my name's Max Flory. I'm a diver. I've been competing for USA Diving for a number of years now. So Brando and I have traveled to a lot of meets together as of lately. The past couple of years, we've been to a lot of competitions together. And yeah, like you said, we both kind of found this same trajectory of sort of moving away from the modern day processed type of foods back into more of a natural way of eating. And I first kind of got introduced to the rabbit hole we went down from Brando.
Was it me? Was it? I was.
Yeah,
That was going to be my first question.
You piqued my interest. You really piqued my interest back the first time we went to Berlin during last season. That was when I got back from that trip is when I sort of started diving into the whole way of like what are we doing now? Why is everyone so unhealthy? Why when I travel I try to eat what's supposed to be good for me but I still feel like shit, and just like sort of starting to question things like that and just see if I could figure out a reason why or a way to feel better on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I think it's funny too because your teammate, and for some people that know, Coop brought it up, but he said he used to try to grocery shop with you, and it was infuriating for him because the things that you would buy. Do you want to walk us through some of the regular foods?
It's funny. I mean, I used to be I've gone on like a whole complete like life change. So like throughout high school, I'd never cooked anything in my life. So like my mom would pack my lunch for school every day, and she would make dinner. And on the weekends, she didn't make my lunch because we didn't have school. So I would just like either eat cereal until I was full or eat like goldfish until I was full because I was like not cooking. So when I first got to college and I had to start grocery shopping on my own, it was kind of a nightmare for Coop because he had to take me, obviously. And we're going down and I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'll get some stuff for like PB and J's." And he's like, "All right, like here's the peanut butter." And I'm like, "Which one should I get?" And he's like, "I don't know. Which one does your mom usually get?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't go grocery shopping, just I have no idea." And he's like, "Dude, just pick one or, just pick something, please." And he's like super fed up with me. And by the end of it, I'm like popping a wheelie with the shopping cart and the checkout line. And he just flips around and he's like, "Stop it." Like he snaps. He's like, "I'm done." Like it was just like I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea how to shop for food. I had no idea how to cook. And now I've got everything set up nicely. Like I have a farmer I go to get food, and I have a market I go to where I can get fresh produce, and I know how to cook. I make delicious meals that are nourishing, nutrient dense, give me like great energy throughout the day. So I've gone in the past just 5 now years of being at school from not knowing how to cook at all, and if I'm on my own, I have to reach for something that's pre-made or processed, like I mentioned, cereal. Like I didn't know how to cook eggs. You know what I mean? So like I'm eating just whatever I can grab and make on my own, like in a microwave. That was pretty much what I was limited to. And to now being able to cook a number of different meals and just like having enough knowledge to be at the liberty of like what do I want to eat? Like what is going to taste good to me? And I know what kind of things I should eat to feel good, and what I should eat to be able to recover, to be able to have energy throughout the day. And now I'm at a place where I can play around with it, and I can just make things that are really just catered to what I like, how I like to feel, what things taste good to me. And so my whole experience with just food in general is completely changed.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think is it's so beautiful, and I think it's kind of dope. I didn't know that I played into that. I didn't know if you found the information on your own or kind of how that ended up connecting, but it's fun to start seeing either people start to question why they eat things and what that actually does for them. Because like you can look at a label and be like, okay, well, like this is, providing me with some protein, some carbs, some fats, and it's not super high calories. So like, yeah, this is good. And to an extent, sure, you can look at it that way if you're looking at like trying to be in a caloric deficit. But like when you actually look at
Right.
the overall, like, hey, what is this providing me? Like, is this providing me any actual like dense nutrients? Take out the calories. Don't think about the
Mhm.
calories. What is this providing me?
The other beautiful thing too is like when you're eating food that is nutrient dense and you're eating food that is natural and is not in a package and has not been made in a lab somewhere, you oftentimes don't need to worry about calories as much as if you were eating, like there have been studies done where they gave people um they did it in rats, and they had one group eating more calories, but they were all coming from whole foods. And then they had another group eating less calories, but they were coming from like processed foods. And the ones eating less calories, but from the processed foods gained more weight. I
Yeah.
wish I could cite this study. I don't have the
Yeah.
information for it. But
We can
so
go
they were
find it.
like, yeah, so pretty much the consensus was like restricting calories matters more when you're eating stuff that's not as good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like I
Yeah,
mean
because you
calories in, calories out's been proven, but like what's your goal with your food too? Is like are you
yeah.
just trying to lose weight? Because if you are only trying to lose weight, you don't give a shit about how you feel, you don't give a shit about performing, you don't give a shit about recovering. Okay, some guy did it. Some guy ate Twinkies and lost weight.
Yeah.
He wanted to prove that calories in, calories out work. So he strictly ate Twinkies, counted his calories, lost weight. If that's your only goal, you don't care at all about how you feel, you don't care at all about longevity in life, fine. You can do
Yeah.
it. So that's something to think about too when you're trying to figure out what to eat and how to eat is like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to be getting out of it?
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because like when you start to look at a lot of the problems within the US specifically, you said like, for your life, we're not just looking at like lifespan. It's not about lifespan, it's about health span. Like how
Disease.
Yeah, like how are you actually being able to function through your life? Do you have, the mobility to go do things? Are you running into the medical industry where you're just popping pills consistently because you have hypertension? Or I mean, you talk about, having to be in a more of a caloric deficit because you're eating all these processed foods, but like you're just so metabolically unhealthy that like
Right.
that's what you always have to think about. Is I always have to think about being in a deficit of calories because I somehow feel like shit all the time. I work out all the time, but still can't lose this weight. And it's like,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like at what point do you actually start to lean into, hey, I need to look at the quality of the food that I'm eating, especially like, and I think this is the interesting part that maybe you and I started like running into. The food that you will buy inevitably will be more expensive. 100% it will be more expensive, but it's like it's the back end will be cheaper. You're not going to be going and using Ozempic and having to get this shot to help you stop eating shit. Like it's just on the back end, you're not going to be going to the hospital because you have diabetes, and it's like at some point you will recognize that you're spending your money up front, but again towards the back end you're not going to be screwed towards the later parts of your life. And that's the part that I feel like freaks people out.
The other thing too is it doesn't need to be expensive. Like,
Yeah.
for example, um, beef. something we know is really healthy for us, has a lot of amino acids and just like overall great. People are like, buy grass fed, buy pasture raised. Yeah, it's higher quality. But the other thing to think about is cows naturally they have two stomachs. So they naturally filter out a lot of, if they have a toxic feed or a feed that's filled with plastic and other shit like that, which is why people say to buy grass fed instead of grain fed, because the grain feed's not regulated very highly, makes the animal more unhealthy. But cows and other ruminants like buffaloes and stuff like that, they have two stomachs, so they can filter those things out a lot better. So like if you can't afford grass-fed beef, you can buy a traditional beef and it's still going to be better for you than like chicken. So like chicken's monogastric, can't filter it out on its own. So you eat something like chicken that's like of a lower quality, or like salmon, like a farmed salmon, that's going to be way worse for you. But you could buy beef that is, not as high of quality, and it's still going to be better for you and not going to be like, they have that stomach that naturally filters it out, so it's still like, yeah, it's not like the highest quality thing ever, but if you're on a budget, like it's a perfectly good option.
Yeah, and you could even
so there's a lot of ways to like work with the money you have to get things that are good for you.
Yeah, I was funny enough, I was just at Walmart looking at like the ground beefs that you can buy, and there was like a 10-pound ground beef for like $5. Like it was huge. I was like, holy shit! Like, yeah, if you're really trying to save.
So there's levels to it. Like some people who are like health influencers will be like, oh, don't buy that, it's low quality, and it's like, okay, some people don't have the money for grass fed. You know what I mean? And if like, and that person's not going to tell you like, hey, cows have two stomachs. Like they have this natural ability to get rid of some of that shit that you're trying to avoid. So like, I think there's an importance where you need to be like educating people on why, because a lot of these health influencers will throw these things at you and they're like, oh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. But if you don't understand why they're saying that, you can't scale it down to whatever level you're at. Because you look at these guys and you're like, oh, you're rich. Like you are an influencer. You got all the money in the world to spend on the highest quality food. Yeah. But the average American doesn't have that money. So they might look at that and just be like, oh, well, I can't do it. And then go back to whatever they were eating before. So I think it's important to like, just like look into it deeper. Like you can just, because you find out a tip like that and then boom, you buy like a 10-pound thing of ground beef for $5 and that'll feed your family for, you know what I mean? It's just like, you can find these ways to use whatever budget you've got. And even if you're not eating what's like perfect from the influencer standpoint, you can eat food that's going to make you healthier and feel better than you currently do.
100%. Yeah, and I think it's kind of interesting too to watch your trajectory of how you bought food, right? So it's like first you were in we'll just say the supermarkets or the grocery stores, and you were buying mac and cheese and PB&Js and stuff like that,
microwave dinners and shit.
Yeah, and then from there you started to upgrade, right? And then you were buying just more whole foods in general. And then from that process, you were like, well, how can I take this a little bit further? So then you went to farmers markets and were buying directly from the source. And then you went a little bit farther and you're like, why don't I just go directly to the farmer itself? And now you have a personal relationship with a farmer.
The other thing too is like about getting direct to that source is there are farmers like everywhere. Wherever you get food, it has to come from somewhere. And it's not hard to figure that out online. And the thing is, like, I was going to a farmer's market for a while. And when I started going to the farmer directly, my grocery bill got cut in half. Like, I would buy the same amount of stuff from the market, and then I went back and bought it from this dude directly. And you feel better. You get to see the farm and the animals, and I meet the guy, shake his hand, I talk to him, I see how he treats the animals and stuff, what kind of thing he has going on. But then also it's like I paid 50% less. So I'm giving the dude directly the money and I'm getting a cheaper grocery bill. Yeah. So it's like a win-win.
Yeah. So, okay, then explain to me that process, because big fan of farmers markets, but you took it to the next step. And I think you told me about the websites, but you had a couple websites that helped you kind of find local
Yeah. So
farmers?
when I first started getting interested in more natural foods, the kind of first thing that piqued my interest was like I want to find some raw dairy. I want to find unpasteurized dairy, and there's a couple websites you can do to find that. So like one of them is like realmilkfinder.com, and the other one I think is called
We'll link these below for people
yeah.
to
Let me
utilize.
see. Give me one second. Give me 1 minute. Yeah, realmilk.com, and the other one is getrawmilk.com.
GetRawMilk.com. There you go.
And I think one of those sites does it in other countries as well. But
Okay.
it's just kind of a database of like where near you can you buy it. So I used that website. I found the farmers market near me. Started going there for a while, and I was buying their milk, and it was labeled Simon's milk. You know, Simon's milk, Simon's yogurt, Simon's butter, whatever. And after a while, I figured out why when I met the guy later. But after a while, I started selling out like extremely quick. Like I would get to the farmer's market like 15 minutes before it opened to try to even get some. And then one day I came and I couldn't get any, and I was like, man, like this has happened like a couple weeks in a row now. Like I want to figure out what's going on. And there was actually a girl on our swim team here. Her name's Mary Smutney, just to give her a shout out. Her mom is also eats the same way I do. Is super interested in a more natural way of eating. They eat a lot of grass fed meats and stuff like that. And she was like, oh, my mom buys raw milk from this guy. I can get his phone number. And so I got the guy's phone number, and she was like, this is Simon's phone number. And then I just pieced together. I was like, oh, all the milk at the farmer's market is Simon's milk. This is Simon. Like, it must be the same guy. And it was. So, like, that was just kind of like got lucky from like a friend of a friend. But there's ways you can find if you don't, even if you don't have like a farmer's market, there's ways you can just find like what farm is near me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I got his phone number, and I texted him, and pretty much he was like, yeah, like I'll send you over a menu. I can do just about any dairy product you want. Just give me a few days notice, and you can come pick it up.
Yeah.
And so I started going up there on the weekends, and he's a great guy. Like he's my friend now. He'll give me gifts sometimes and stuff. Like I went there this morning, and he sent me back with like a fresh baked loaf of bread that he made this morning. So along with my order. So like when I first went to see him, like he gave me a tour of his farm, and it's awesome. I mean, he has one fence surrounding the entire property, and all his animals just roam free in there. So he's got chickens, ducks, geese, cows, goats, sheep. So you can get, goat dairy products, cow dairy products, eggs, um, and whatever. So he'll make, which was cool. So when I started wanting to get into other recipes and stuff, I could ask him for any type of dairy, and he would make it for me, and I would just come pick it up, pay him directly. You feel, what kind of quality life these animals live. And you get to shake the guy's hand, get to know him, give him money directly. So like
Yeah.
it just played out really nicely.
Yeah, it's like you break it back down to like, because you're kind of walking back in life, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what we used to have to do. It's like you either grew your own food or you were connected to a local farmer, and like being able to
Right.
like experience that for yourself, like you just said, you get to see how the animals are living, and like they're happy, they're healthy, they're all kind of like
Yeah.
communally like built into this area, and like like you've met the
Oh
farmer. He's
yeah,
not like
man.
he's like beating the shit out of the cows. Like it's a
And
great
they're
life.
they're they're just grazing on his land. They're all mixed in together. They're just grazing all day. They hang out. It's nice. I mean, I was petting goats this morning while I was waiting for him to get and he knows all of their names. He's got hundreds of animals. He knows all of their names. He walks by. He's like, "Oh, Rosie," and whatever. Like it's they're like his family. It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah, I think there's a
But
beauty
yeah.
to
So I mean,
that.
it's just like I'd highly recommend anyone interested looks into it, because it's it's not hard to find a local farmer near you, and you'll get really high quality food, and it'll be a lot cheaper than like buying it from a market or a grocery store or something. Like you can buy like quarter cows from people, and then when you break down the cost of the meat at the end of it, it's like dollars per pound, as opposed to like if you got steak from the grocery store, it's going to be like $15 a pound, depending on the
Yeah.
cut. So
Yeah. And I think there's the piece that's very interesting that like you're almost, and I don't know if I'm taking this like too woo woo, but like you're almost more spiritually connected with the food because you know the guy that's processing all of it. You've met the animals, you've pet half of them. And it's like,
yeah,
it's there's more of like a circle of life instead of just like walking up to a superstore. Like, let's just say you're going to Whole Foods, expensive shit. You're super disconnected from what you're buying, and it's just in out. And like you lose
right.
that like real connection. And I feel like maybe, and like you've inspired me, like I would love to like really start to find a farmer in this area and like connect with them and do this like the same steps that you've
I
taken.
highly recommend it. It's awesome. Because I mean,
Yeah.
especially like when I can go, like you look these animals in the eyes and like you pet them and stuff, and you can see like they're happy hanging out and they're doing their thing. And I mean, every farm's going to be different, but this guy that I go to, his name is Simon. He's in Homestead. If anyone is in the area and wants to buy dairy, I'll give you his phone number. He'd be more than happy. But he doesn't sell meat because these are his babies.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like you hear arguments from like vegans that are like, oh, you can't eat meat, like it's bad for the animals. He eats meat. He just doesn't sell he doesn't sell the meat from his animals. He's just dairy and eggs.
Okay.
He's just like is so connected to him. But like
Yeah.
I'm like, look, if you care about the animals, don't buy the monocrop agriculture from the supermarket.
Yeah.
They're
The big
killing
ag.
so many animals to be able to farm those crops. Like you're going backwards. If you don't want to eat meat, that's fine. But like I said, like milk is like the most vegan thing you can do. Because like I go to this guy, these animals live a comfy life and they're not even getting killed for food. You're drinking their milk and eating their eggs. And then you could even do that and be like, okay, I don't want to kill animals. Fine. Don't eat the meat. But if you add in stuff like eggs and dairy and these animals are living a beautiful, comfortable life, you'll even be like 10 times healthier than if you cut out all of that. And you're also not giving your money to corporations that are just like plowing down fields, killing tons of wildlife, spraying glyphosate and all this other shit on the crops. So it's like, it's the argument of being vegan is kind of funny to me because I have this experience where I go and see the farmer and like I see the animals. And that's like, if you're going to eat meat, I think that's the best way to do it aside from hunting. If you have the ability to go out and hunt on your own, that's probably the most ethical possible way to eat meat because it's like, it's a wild animal that's lived its full life and it's like a circle of life exchange, but like buying meat, I always try to buy regenerative meat because then you cut out the whole problem of it being bad for the environment. Then you're contributing to the environment. It's even better. And you know that the animals are treated humanely. They live their full life as they're supposed to. They're not pumped with any antibiotics or anything. They graze on grass. And when the circle of life comes, then you get to nourish your family.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I do think it's funny. And again, it's like you brought up, if you don't have the income yet to buy like, locally and, kind of higher quality meat, that's fine. You can kind of lean into that big agriculture, that system. The big ag is there. Use it for your advantage.
It's not going away.
Yeah, it's not going away. But like, how can we shrink it once you get the income? And
right.
I do think that piece is so important too, because it's like, if you hate the killing of animals in like a very just malicious way, we'll say, then it's like, then go to individual farmers, find out how that's being done, and then you can understand the process. Or even better, right, if you want to be connected with your food, like you just said, like go hunt your food, because then you're like you're killing like a stag or something that's towards the end of its life, to where it's going to either get absolutely massacred by, nature, because nature's metal.
Right.
And so it's going to get ripped apart by like wolves or something, or like you can humanely kill it. And then you can process all of that meat on your own. And then boom, like you have, let's just say like 80 pounds of meat that you can utilize.
Dude, way more. A whole cow is so, oh my goodness. Like, or like if you're hunting like a buffalo or like a deer, that's gonna be like so many, you'll feed yourself for a long time. But yeah, it's just, it's interesting. Like the argument of not wanting to eat meat's a little backwards. But I also think too, like when you have to think about it, when you're talking about not wanting to kill animals, and then you have to take your health into consideration too. So like, yeah, there's big agriculture. It's like, oh, I don't have enough money to buy a regenerative grass-fed steak. Okay, do I not buy the standard meat, or do I not eat meat? You know what I mean? Do I buy it or do I not buy it? It's like there's a balance, I feel like, where you have to take into account your own health, and then you also take into account the greater good. Because it's like, if you are only trying to fight the good fight your whole life, you might let your own life like wash away, without being able to live it to the fullest because you're not healthy. So like, I think you have to find a balance. There's so much one person can do. So I think you have to do what makes sense for you.
Sure. Yeah, like get your own house in order before you go and like quote unquote save the world. I do buy into that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you're unhealthy and sick all the time, like you're not going to be able to make a difference.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting too, when now that you've kind of like leaned into this new way of eating, and it's kind of like a new perspective on life to an extent, on how you like look and, go about, getting your food, which is such a big part of our lives. But it's funny when you start to like talk to, and this happened to me for like family members, ones that aren't as close. So like, we'll just take it out of like, like your close instant family, but like, oh, you're on a diet. I'm like, well, I don't know if I would say I'm on a diet. Like I'm not, and this is funny, right? Because it seems like from a third party perspective, you're looking down at, our meals or whatever. Oh, like, well, you're restricting. You're like, I don't know if I'm restricting. I'm just, I'm not grabbing the cereal in the morning. Sorry. I wanted some real ass food. And like, I want to be satiated and full by the end of it. I don't want to like, because like you said, dude, if you put a box, like a gallon box of goldfish in front of me, or if you put like, any sort of cereal,
down.
Just murder the whole thing. I will absolutely eat the whole thing easily. Your body just doesn't process it. It doesn't. Yeah, I'm still hungry. I didn't get any nutrients from that. And so
it's also just like, so when I think there's like a lot of levels to it. So when I first started eating this way, I was very dogmatic. Like I followed different influencers, and I didn't really fully understand, and I would just follow things that they said, and I was like, anything else is wrong. The longer I've been eating, mostly natural foods and stuff, and the longer I've been just kind of experimenting with myself, and just following these things and questioning more and more and more, the less I think there's a certain right way, and the more I think it's just like, don't give yourself a bunch of nonsense. Like, think about it. If you're waking up in the morning eating a bowl of Reese's Puffs, and then you go to school, and let's say you're eating like a cafeteria lunch, you know what I mean? It's just like, what are you doing? Like, I'm not saying, hey, you got to eat meat, or you got to eat steak, or you got to eat this and that. It's just like, just eat something real, Yep. Eat anything that's real and see what you like. Like, you might not like beef. Fine, don't eat it. Eat a good chicken, eat eggs, eat vegetables, eat fruit, eat something real. Because I mean, I think the biggest problem people run into is that there's just such a huge, if you go down to a grocery store, the portion of it that's just processed food is massive. It's huge. And it's like, become so normal now. Like there's vending machines everywhere. If you go to an airport, there's candy and snacks and other stuff like that everywhere. So it's like I don't feel like I'm on a diet. I just don't really eat that in my day-to-day life. Like if I have to, if I'm in a pinch, I'll eat something, you know what I'm saying? Like if I'm traveling, if I'm stuck somewhere, you know, I'm not crazy. Like I'm gonna eat, but like I just think it's ridiculous to think that eating stuff like that on a consistent basis is normal.
Yeah.
Like if you're eating cereal every single day, like it's candy. You know what I mean? Like it's not real food. It doesn't come from an animal or a plant. Like it's you know, in the longer you've eaten mostly whole foods for, the less you want things like that. I think the more you start to realize how you feel after a meal, and you just like your cravings, you don't get cravings for food like that. Like if I get a craving for food, it's like a real food. Like I'll be like, dude, I want a pineapple so bad right now. Or like
Yeah.
like I never am like, oh, I wish I had a bowl of cereal. I never feel like that. It's just because like I think you realize how much better you feel, and like real food tastes good, especially if you can learn how to make meals and stuff. It tastes great. I'd never eat something I don't like, ever.
Yeah.
I don't eat food that doesn't taste good to me. And I also don't eat processed food almost ever. So it's like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, you got to be restrictive and you got to eat boring foods to be healthy. You don't at all. At all. I think it's actually the opposite. I think your body does have a bit of a natural intuition into what it needs, but it gets muddied when you feed it this hyper palatable processed food, because that like messes with your system. But your body does have a natural way of knowing like, oh, I need these amino acids, I need this vitamin, I need this whatever. And that's where you get cravings from.
Yeah.
But you start to fuck with that system when you give it these like processed hyperpalatable foods, because they're designed to make your brain want it. That's exactly what they're meant to do. So that's why kids get addicted to candy and like chips and stuff like that. But if you get yourself away from that and you just eat whole foods 90% of the time, you'll feel great. You'll likely know what you want and need to eat, because you'll know what tastes good to you, and you don't have to worry about, oh, am I getting enough of this? Do I need to supplement this? Just start at the basics. Like just eat only whole foods for a while. Pick your favorite vegetables, pick your favorite fruits, pick your favorite meats or fish or whatever. Have some dairy if you like it, and just see how you feel for a bit. You know, get some honey, get some maple syrup for you know, if you want to throw that in there, you know what I mean? Like just stuff that is naturally found outside. Like, and you'll just see a huge difference in how you feel and probably how you look too.
Yeah, it is interesting too when you go down the rabbit hole of watching someone try to diet versus watching someone try to just change the quality of their food. Because the outcomes are almost exactly the same, if not exactly the same. It's like if you, like you just said, if you change the breakfast from cereal, but you have a sweet tooth, it's like, can you utilize maybe a Ninja Creamy and make, you know, some sort of like fuck it. You can have ice cream for breakfast. It can be healthy. You just have to like make it.
Dude, that's another thing that people don't understand is there's no such thing as bad foods. There's just bad ingredients.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as bad foods.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, pizza's bad for you. Oh, ice cream's bad for you. Not if you make it the right way. Not if you make it the right way. It's not. You can eat, if you are making food at home, you could eat all your favorite foods and you can make it with natural ingredients. And it's the same thing as eating them on their own. You know, cooking the ingredients together isn't going to turn it unhealthy. So it's just funny because it's like you'll be like, oh, you don't eat processed foods. You must be restricting yourself. I'm like, dude, I had ice cream last night and it was delicious and it was healthy. Oh, and I had steak. Oh, and I made burgers too. Oh, and you know, I made nachos. It's like I can make the more I've learned about food, I can make all of my favorite foods and make them out of just high quality ingredients that are all natural foods, and it's just like it's delicious, nutritious, and it gives you great energy. I mean, you feel amazing. So it's like, why why would I even eat a processed version of that when what I'm making tastes better?
Yeah. Yeah, and like the only flip to that, right, is people are looking for convenience. It's time.
Hmm.
If I can
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
throw this meal in the microwave and just have it done in 3 minutes, then oh well, like that's easier. And I think that's the one flip to this, right? Is everything you've explained is just been more work. It's not bad
Hmm.
work. We both think it's fun and it's a good time, and it's
Right.
fun to watch that process, to make the ice cream, to see the ingredients that you put in. Like, hey, I made this end product. It tastes fantastic, and like I feel good eating it. And like it fucks with your mind, right? Because it's like you're like breaking the matrix. You're like something's glitching out here. Like I can
Well,
have
it's
ice
it's it's
cream.
just like you're making something too. You feel good when you make something.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's, you see your work come to fruition, you get to eat it. It's like, I think cooking is one of the most like high ROI activities you can get to, I guess, learn,
yeah,
because the better you get at it, the better the food you make is going to be and the healthier you're going to get.
yeah,
But the thing is, like, I don't spend that much time cooking.
yeah,
And we're training every day and I'm in class. Like, I'm in class and training every day, and I pack my lunch for school, because when I go to campus in the day, like I go to class, I go to practice, I have a small break, I eat, go back to practice, go back to class, whatever. But and I don't spend a whole lot of time on my day cooking because I don't like to spend time cooking. But that's the beauty of this, is like, the more you get to know how you should be eating, how food works, and the more you're like, okay, I'm going to use these natural ingredients, you can figure out what you like, and just like a lot of it is not that much cooking. Like,
it's really not
you
that
don't
hard.
have to you
Yeah,
don't have to you don't have to cook you don't have to cook fruit. You don't have to cook most vegetables. Some
yeah,
vegetables you do need to cook, right?
yeah,
Meat doesn't take long to cook.
yeah,
Eggs don't take long to cook. Fish doesn't take long to cook.
yeah,
So it's like, yeah, I get it, but like it's daunting at first, but
yeah,
I think it's something that's worthwhile to look into and get to know, because it gets easy and then your health just skyrockets. So I just
yeah.
think there's no real downside in trying to do it. Like, for example, one of my go-to lunches lately has been shrimp and mango salsa.
Mm,
So like, you could make the mango salsa at home, but for the sake of time, I don't. I buy it from the farmer's market, and the ingredients are like mangoes, red onions, cilantro, jalapenos, lime juice. Simple. And then I air fry shrimp, which takes 10 minutes, and I don't really have to do anything. Mix it
yeah,
together, put it in a Tupperware. Do that a few times. Done. You know what I mean? And then I've got a good lunch for the week. And then if I want some snacks, like just throw some fruit in there. Snacks, done. So it's like I can make that on a Sunday, and it takes me, for maybe like 5 lunches, like it makes me like 2 batches or 3 batches in the air fryer of doing the shrimp. And then like I don't even really have to clean up. You know what I mean? I don't really have to prepare anything. I just throw that together, and then I've got lunch for the week. It's all packed. And then I'll eat eggs in the morning. Eggs takes 5 minutes to cook. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And like, typically I'll eat either ground beef or steak in the evening, which takes a few minutes to cook. And a lot lately, one of my go-tos has been like steak or ground beef with like a chopped up avocado, some cilantro, lime juice. Simple. And then like I'll have like, if I'm craving something sweet, can have some ice cream. If I'm craving something sweet, I'll go for the buttered dates sometimes too. I
yeah,
love those. But like, a lot of fruit is delicious to have after dinner, and you don't have to cook that. Like, if you have a sweet tooth, like you get good fruit, I promise you it'll taste better.
yeah,
Like, yeah, and so like, it's I don't spend very much time cooking. And I always have good food to eat, and I don't get hungry during the day ever. And I don't restrict anything. When I'm hungry, I eat. If I'm not hungry, I don't.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't count calories. I don't do anything like that. And I don't eat
Works.
anything I don't like. Like all my
Yeah.
food's delicious.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting too, because when you look at even going out and eating, we'll say quote unquote less healthier foods, I think
Hmm.
one thing I like to tell people too is like, hey, like I pick and choose what comes into my house and what I eat on a
Yes.
consistent daily basis.
Yes.
But that also
Yes.
makes me feel a little bit better when I go out. Like I'm not like it's not psycho. Like, dude, I can go out and have In and
Mm-mm.
Out. Like that's okay because it's
Yeah.
not an everyday thing. If it's like very infrequent, then it shouldn't be a problem. Because like you said, it's like when you first start, you're so dogmatic. Well, like I
Hmm.
don't want these foods or that, or I'm gonna get like if I have this like now, it's gonna start affecting
Right.
me.
It's
It's
like,
like no,
oh,
no,
this
no.
is bad for you. Don't eat it ever.
Yeah, so it's like by intaking it less consistently, if you can just weed it out. But it's like, dude, it's okay to have regular ice cream, to go to In and Out. Like we're gonna get
Yeah.
pizza when we go to Berlin,
I do that
and
all the time, man. I have a girlfriend. We
yeah,
live together. We go on dates pretty
yeah,
frequently. Like, once a week we'll go on a date. So it's like, I'm not gonna go to the restaurant and be like, I'm not eating this.
yeah,
That's ridiculous. You also got
yeah,
to think about it too, is it's a scale of like health, happiness, all
yeah,
overall well-being, enjoyment of life. Like if you are taking your eating to the extreme that you're not enjoying life anymore, you're not healthy in my opinion.
yeah,
Like I don't think that's healthy, and I don't think that's fun, and I don't think that's like a good way to live. So like there's a scale. Like you need to take all these things into account. Um like when I first got really into this, I started bringing an induction burner to competitions with me so I could cook food while I was traveling, which
yeah,
was cool.
yeah,
It was nice. I could cook like great meals, but after a while I started to realize I was like, "Hey, I'm at a competition. Like even though I'm eating good food and I like it, it's adding an extra thing of time and I don't want to say stress, but stress to the overall trip that doesn't need to be there.
yeah,
So that was back when I kind of thought that like I had to eat a certain way to be healthy, and if I was like, don't I need to avoid these things at all costs. And so I stopped doing that because I was like the overall is like net neutral or net negative on this because I'm not like if I can go and not do these things, like it's extra. Like I don't have to bring this and cook. You know what I mean? If I just don't worry about that and like, okay, I'm traveling for a week, I'm just gonna go out to eat. It's more convenient. I can focus on my competition and not worry about anything else. That has a higher like positive outcome for me than it
yeah.
does just to feel like I'm eating better food. So I think it's always something you have to consider is like where do you land on the scale with what you're doing? Like, are you so into it to the point that you're not enjoying your life anymore? Like you won't go out with your friends, you won't go out with your girlfriend because you don't want to enjoy like a meal at a restaurant. It's like you need to I think you need to do this in all aspects of life, but like you need to make sure you're balanced here, that like you're not tipping too far one way or the other.
Yeah. I think that's the funny part too, is when you start to look at, and you said influencers and stuff like that, um, you find like it's like it literally turned into politics when we started watching, like Paul
Yeah.
Saladino, we both like his information, but there's give in that
Hmm.
information. Cause it's like, do you buy into, hormesis when you eat vegetables or blah, blah, blah. You could go on forever. And it's like, you have
Yeah.
these
You
influencers
can
fighting each other. It's just like a waste of time. At some point, it's like, hey, I like his information. I'm
right.
taking it in, but like I like cilantro, or like I feel like having
Right.
whatever green
Well,
that
the thing
really,
is, the thing is, it's too big of a blanket statement to say that all vegetables are bad for you.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
just too big of a blanket statement. And when you're an influencer, you got to take into account too that like okay, he's deep in the rabbit hole. If that's what he wants to do, fine. But you got to take into account that there's people that eat cereal every day. There's people that eat microwave meals every day. I was one of those people. if you're telling them vegetables are bad for you, they're not going to go and eat grass-fed steak and organic fruit. They're going to go back and eat microwave meals, and they're going to stop eating vegetables.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to understand that like the majority of people don't have all this knowledge. And it's like if you can just promote eating like normal foods, real food, it's I think that's way better. There's one of the guys that I follow now that I still really like his content because it's not dogmatic and it takes into account other aspects of life. I think he's at Noah Ryan Co. on Instagram and Twitter. But if you search that, you'll find him. He's got some good stuff. Cause like guys like Paul Saladino, when they first started, I was like, oh, this stuff's really cool. And then he got like so far down the line that I was like, all right, like this is, you're missing the mark. You know what I mean? Like the point is to live an overall healthier life, not to obsess, you know? Yeah. So I was like, after a while, I was like, okay, I don't really resonate with this anymore. Yeah. It's not really like, I don't think this is like beneficial to me. But this guy, Noah Ryan Co., he's another influencer, and he lives in Mexico in a beach town, and he has access to a lot of really high quality foods, and he's great at cooking. So he posts his meals, and he has fun with his friends. He'll post him going out to a bar and drinking with his friends. And he's like, look, this is life. Like sometimes I travel, sometimes whatever. So I just think it's more real. And there's another guy I really like. I think he's at Cooking with Chris on Instagram and Twitter. And this guy's whole content's just about cooking. So he'll post meals he makes, the ingredients, how he makes them, and it's all super high quality stuff. And I like getting ideas from him. And that's where I got the idea for the nachos that I showed you I made recently. Yeah. Came from his page. So there's a lot of great content out there. I just think whenever you're looking at stuff like that, like take it all with a grain of salt and like process it for yourself, not for like whoever they're targeting. It's just like, think about it, applying whatever you learn to your situation. Does this make sense for me? Does it make sense for me to do this? Because like, if you see this guy who's living in a beach town in Mexico eating mangoes, you know what I mean? That might not make sense for you if you live in like for you, for example, in Indiana in the winter. It's not really going to make sense for you to be eating a bunch of mangoes. So it's just like you want to like, I think you want to try to learn as much as you can from these people because there's a lot of really good information out there. But it's like, take into account your own situation, apply it to your life in a way that gives you an overall net positive boost in quality of life or in health or whatever it may be. Because the second you start to get too neurotic or too dogmatic, I don't think it's benefiting you anymore. I think it's honestly hurting. So it's just like, figure out what works for you and just like try to get any little piece you can. Yeah.
And I also found like you almost have to get very extreme first. Like sometimes, and it's like you hear this with like money. It's like I think this was Jim Carrey. He's like, you have to first be rich to understand that it's like not everything you really wanted. Like a Ferrari's cool for
makes sense
the first few days, but then you're like, fuck, like this sucks. Like I worked my whole life to make all this money and it still means nothing. Like I want actual connection with people. That's what you actually want. And so it's like sometimes you have to go to that extreme to recognize that even that extreme is like fairly...
It's not the answer.
It's not the answer. It's not as like healthy as you think because like we need human connection. And so by like getting that extreme, you cut it off. And so it's like, I think what I found was online, I started like not muting or unfollowing, but I just like would see their posts and just kind of like skim or just completely skip it.
Just pass it by.
Yeah, they're all kind of like attacking each other. So if you can find someone like the people that you named that are just like, hey, this is what I'm making. This is what I like. Obviously, I've been pushing you to do that because I feel like you have really great recipes. And even if it's remakes, it's
maybe
kind of
one
fun
day. Maybe one day.
Yeah, but I think that's a beautiful part is to kind of like experience, like you said, what works for you, integrate it into your life, and see like those benefits. Because again, like you can have seed oils. Try not to make it 24/7, but you're gonna be okay. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's not gonna kill you.
Like we're gonna go to that same pizza place in Berlin that we're both very excited about. It's
And
definitely
it's going to be awesome.
yeah, and it's like a mom and pop too, so it's like you can trust it a
Yeah,
little bit more. Obviously, like
true.
the bread in Europe is a hell of a lot, easier to
Yeah,
digest and
certainly.
work with. But I think
Certainly. Well,
overall,
that's the thing is like bread's not bad for you if you make it out of good ingredients, you know.
yeah,
It's everyone's trying to blame something. Like, oh,
yeah,
it's vegetables. Oh, it's bread. Oh, it's carbs. Oh, it's like only eat meat. Oh, it's like, dude, I don't think any of it is right. It's like just, and I don't think there's any sense in trying to place the blame on one section of food. It's just like,
yeah,
just eat majority real foods and, tailor it to your goals. Like if you're training and you want to get extra protein and carbs in because you need it during the day, tailor it to that. But I'm saying like if you eat mostly real foods, you'll feel better than majority of the population. And I don't think 99% of people need to go as deep as saying like, oh, I'm never gonna have a piece of bread. I'm never gonna have a vegetable. Because like I said earlier, there's no bad foods. There's just bad ingredients.
yeah. And the part that this kind of cracked me up because it's a perfect like step over into the other thing I kind of just wanted to touch upon, and maybe this is just maybe this is a whole nother podcast that we'll have to do, but it's
Okay.
and it's the funniest thing. You start with food. That's usually what it starts with, and then it starts to
Yeah.
bleed into other places of your life. And so it's like you
Right.
and I started getting obsessed with, well, like what else is like not that great? What else is so fucking synthetic
Uh-huh.
that it's just like ruining my shit? And so it's like, we start to look at the clothing that we're wearing. You're starting to look at the
Mm-hmm.
shampoos you're using, the toothpaste that you're using, the deodorant that you're using, even
Right.
the lotions, which is a big one that you've
Right.
liked. What have been some of those changes for you that have been like really have made a big difference? Because like I can speak it on my side, but I feel like you've done a pretty great job on changing a lot of these things for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. This is another one of those things where it's like it's really easy to get overwhelmed when you start looking into it because we're bombarded with a lot of different chemicals and they have effects on your body. And when you start looking into what they're doing and how they're everywhere, it's easy to get like freaked out like, oh, I need to fix all of this now. It's another thing where I think it's like, okay, you have to take a step back and look like, is this benefiting me or not, But one one thing there's two things that I'm still doing that are kind of like staples for me. But one major change I did that this completely changed my life was the switch from away from lotion. So like throughout my whole diving career, I would get like horribly dry skin at competitions. And by the end of the competition, which is usually when we're competing in our event in 10 meters, it's like the last day. By the end of the competition, my skin would be so ruined that like just like bending down hurt. And it like, I don't want to say it affected my performance, but it was distracting at practice because it's just so painful. Like my skin would get so unbelievably dry. And when I started using, I'll shout out the Van Man company. They make a great tallow balm. It's beef tallow instead
Hmm.
of lotion,
Which
which
freaks
is
people
if
out. It
anyone doesn't
freaks
know, it's
people
the
out.
it's the it's the fat from a cow.
Yeah.
But this company makes a great tallow balm, and it's like beef tallow, beeswax, honey, essential oils if you want it. They make a scented and unscented version, and like olive oil. So and it's blended up already into like a balm. So you just take a little bit, put on your skin. And I also switched from like body wash to a tallow soap as well. And though that switch did numbers for my skin. I don't, I almost never get pimples now, which is just like a cool side effect, but it fixed my main problem of dry skin at meets. I never get painful dry skin anymore. And if I do, I put a tiny bit of the balm on and it goes away instantly. So like I've completely eliminated a factor that was like very distracting to practice and just painful to deal with at competitions by just like removing something that I didn't need to be doing. like you don't need to be rubbing, like if you ever looked at the ingredients list on a body wash or a shampoo or a conditioner, it's like
It's
30
unreal.
ingredients long. It's unreal.
Well, it's like
But
cereal. It's like cereal.
yeah,
Like
it's
that's
crazy.
that's
It's
your
crazy.
your
It's crazy.
perfect equation. You're like, what the fuck? Like I don't know what 99% of this is.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So that is like a huge thing that like completely blew me away for like life-changing difference. Another one was like we talked about clothing a little bit. So everything's made out of polyester these days. There have been studies showing that like polyester is making people infertile basically. Like
Yeah.
it's crushing their sperm count. So again, not to be dogmatic, I don't only wear organic cotton clothes. But one thing I try to do majority of the time is have the cotton underwear
Yeah.
because that's the area that has the biggest effect. Yeah, I have some cotton shirts, I have some cotton shorts and stuff, but like the biggest problem that I'm looking to avoid is infertility. And so when there's these studies showing that like putting a piece of polyester on your genitals is making you infertile, that's going to be my main point of focus. So like I'm not going to get rid of my whole closet and refill it back up with only cotton, but I don't own any polyester underwear anymore. I only own cotton underwear. We wear polyester Speedos every day.
Yeah.
It's part of the sport.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wear a cotton Speedo. That would be
Yeah.
fucking ridiculous. It would be stupid. You know what I mean? It's not. So I think there's these things you got to take into consideration. Like, yeah, I'm going to wear cotton underwear because, okay, it might be a little more expensive, but fertility is something that's important to me. I want to be able to have kids one day. And it's not difficult to do. I don't have to replace my whole closet. I'll just replace my underwear. And if you want to and you have extra money, fine, replace, whatever. But
Yeah.
and it's just like that's a simple change. So like that's something I do pretty much all the time now. Yeah, I still wear polyester Speedos every day. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not great. Comes with the sport. I think you kind of touched on this when you did your barefoot episode, but like you like climbing. You jam your feet into tiny shoes that are, it's super bad for your feet, but that's part of the activity. It's part of the fun. And it's not something you want to get rid of just so you have healthy feet. It's that would be like overall bad for your life because you enjoy climbing.
Yeah.
So we enjoy diving. I'm gonna wear the Speedo. I understand that it's bad for me. So when I'm not diving, I'm gonna do what's good for me. So I think there's like that's the common theme is just like having the understanding of what you're doing, why you're doing it, and just keeping that in mind. Because just because you know something's bad for you doesn't mean you should never do it, but it means you should at least understand why and be conscious when you're making these choices.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought one other big one for me that I found to be a pretty big switch was actually, well, I guess it's more so two. They kind of like end up bleeding into one another is like cleaning, like detergents.
Mm,
And
yeah,
so, and it freaks people out when you're like, hey, I used like a vinegar-based detergent for my clothes. And they're like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, that has to smell disgusting. You're like, dude, you don't smell anything. You smell nothing.
yeah,
And then the other one was actually utilizing just like what you clean your counters with and all that stuff.
hmm
Again, is just vinegar-based. And if you want to talk about not overspending, because there's a bunch of like greenwashed companies that still have really shit products, but they try to like lie
yep,
to you that it's healthier. But you can make these
yeah,
ingredients so unbelievably cheap because, dude, a gallon of white vinegar is like 89 cents, at
yeah,
least in
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Indiana. Like, it's just so laughably cheap. Like, you can use that for cleaning your counters. You can add a little bit of essential oils to make it have a little bit more
To
of
make
a
it smell
smell.
good if you want to, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then, it's like you do those little tiny changes, and then like another big one is like, can you filter the water for your shower and what you drink?
hmm
And like
hmm
to me, it's like if you were to give someone like a list of things, it'd be like the things that you just said. Like, let's look at the lotion, let's
Right.
look at the shampoos. You look at what you clean your clothes with because that can
Yep.
bleed into your skin too. What you drink is probably I'd put at the top of the list. And then
Yeah, drinking water is definitely like if
it's
you
a
just look at the
must.
quality of our
Yeah.
drinking water, it's horrendous. It's
It's bad.
horrendous.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
horrendous. So yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one thing I do. I didn't mention it just because like you don't notice the benefits of that so much. That's more of just like a long-term health thing.
Yeah.
But the lotion and stuff I noticed like straight away because it fixed a like direct problem I was having. But yeah, I got a
Yeah.
filter for my water. I think it's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean there's all sorts of things you could dive into, but
Just start with the
but
big
again
ones.
for the purpose of people who haven't started anything, it's like it's like this that's kind of the route a lot of influencers go. They're like, you have to do this and this and this. Oh, don't use this anymore. Don't use this anymore. And people are gonna get overwhelmed. They're gonna be like, okay, well, this guy's either crazy or like I'm not doing all that. And it's like you don't have to do everything. It's
Yep.
like take what's important to you, and even if you don't want to do some things, just understand why, understand the choices you're making, and apply whatever you learn to your situation.
Yep.
So it's not it doesn't have to be like, oh, it's it's do this or nothing. It's like there's things you can implement. You don't have to be living this life that the influencer's living. Like this is your life. It's just like use the information to help you have a
Yep.
better life, not make your life more strenuous.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that kind of helped people kind of, get a good feel for, like eating healthier and cleaner. And it's not necessarily any which way. We like to say it's animal based, but like I feel like that word has been completely fucking overtaken by the influencers.
Yeah.
So just eat clean shit. Just eat real food is kind of where you end up falling upon. And then, for outside of your food, just try to filter out the garbage, like the other pieces, right? So the detergents, the things you clean, the lotions, make it similar to your food. It should be one to a few ingredients maximum, right? And so I think these little pieces that you can understand and see throughout your day will make a big change over time. But with that being said, I think we can retouch. I think maybe in the next podcast of like, get into the specifics about outside of food, because I think that part is
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
fun and it is kind of fun to dive into. But thank you for joining, and I know we'll get you back on fairly soon.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
All right, people. Well, we'll see you soon, and we'll catch you at the next one.